Hello and welcome to the second edition of Cambridge Coffee Corner. I'm Duncan and I'm your host once again today, and I am joined by three esteemed colleagues. As from last time, I'm joined by Ken Belanger and Sarah Pelton, VP and partner of Cambridge Retail Advisors respectively. But this time, we're joined by Mike Powell, a specialist in supply chain. So welcome Ken, welcome Sarah, and welcome Mike.
Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you, Duncan.
So everybody, have you got your coffee at the ready?
Yeah.
Very good. So we'll say a little cheers to the coffee, and we'll delve straight in. So after last week, the last edition of Cambridge Coffee Corner, where we focused on tariffs, we're going to evolve that discussion this time and talk about impacts on supply chains. And with Mike spending many years and more years than he's told me about in the supply chain world, Mike is particularly tuned into supply chain technology, but with things that are occurring in the world today and disruption and things like that, we felt that this was a great subject to tackle next. So we'll delve straight in, and with that one, Mike, I'll come straight to you with tariffs and trade at the tip of people's tongues. How have you seen the effect on transportation management in the world today, Mike? Can you pick it up?
Yep. So, I mean, obviously, tariffs are resulting in much higher landed costs for companies, and that's leading them to reevaluate their supply chain routing and the transportation modes they're using. In some cases, they're going right the way back up to the start of the supply chain and diversifying sourcing. Yeah. We've also seen a lot of volatility in volumes through the ports, with people buying forward before tariffs and then demand dropping off afterwards. And as an example, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have seen variances plus minus 30%. So with all that going on, clearly companies need a much more agile approach to transportation management. And a TMS solution can help them rapidly recalibrate to ensure that their carrier selection, mode selection, the routing, the tendering, and load execution can be done more in real time to help control costs and, importantly, maintain customer service.
Yeah. So Mike, I've always pictured transportation management solutions as something that you kind of set up once and it kind of happens after that, and you may come back and tweak it now and again. I think you're describing something much more agile than that, and much more able to react relatively quickly. So yeah. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, a modern TMS system is completely flexible. It will have a very sophisticated optimization engine at the front end. So, the orders flow into the system. And then before loads are built, there's an optimization process. Now, in the modern world, you can re-optimize several times, and you can get full flexibility through the system. And I think that's particularly important in, what's going on at the moment with tariffs and all of the trade wars and so forth.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about the use of a transportation management system, and you see that changing cost occurring, is that something that where a transportation management system really comes into its own then around that?
Yes, it is. The TMS will collect data on rates and routes and carrier performance and the transit times. It will support a lot of analytics around that and help businesses forecast to identify trends and potential disruptions and respond with confidence to those and ultimately drive down costs. So it's a much more dynamic world than it used to be. Originally, TMS systems, as you said earlier, you set them up, you put in the carriers you're going to use, you put in your origins and destinations for your routes, and pretty much, that would be pretty static. Now you can manipulate that as much as you want, and you can run what if scenarios to say, well, suppose I put another fulfillment center in this location. What does that do to my overall network? And you can, use a TMS platform to figure out whether you're in a better or a worse position.
Right.
One of the biggest trends we're seeing in our client base is a significant uptick in the selection and implementation of transportation management systems for many reasons that Mike has already discussed. More retailers are realizing that with growing complexity in freight logistics, especially with rising costs, volatile carrier rates, and increasing consumer expectations, having a modern TMS isn't just a nice to have, it's actually becoming quite essential. So what's driving the acceleration is a strong ROI profile. While many supply chain solutions can take years to pay off, what we're seeing is that TMS implementations typically break even with just a 2 to 3% increase in cost savings. But the biggest impact is that most of our clients are actually seeing freight reduction in the range of 8 to 15% when fully optimized. So it's a smart strategic investment that doesn't just cut costs, it actually improves the visibility and enhances carrier relationships.
That's a really good point there, Sarah. When you talked about the ROI there, I mean, you would have imagined that an ROI calculation in the past would have been measured over months and years and based upon little savings and things. Now it could end up paying off in weeks, depending upon what occurs dynamically in the marketplace.
Exactly.
And just another point, Duncan. I mean, Sarah's reference there, the typical savings that you can achieve on your total cost of freight under management, let's say a range of 18 to 15%. But the other thing to note about a TMS is that the implementation costs, or to cover the implementation costs, you only need usually to achieve a 2 or 3% reduction in your freight costs.
Right.
So any savings above 2 to 3%, the system is paying dividends. And that really is why so many companies are still pushing forward with selecting and implementing TMS.
So Ken, let me come to you for a minute, because I've kind of tagged you, Ken, as maybe the voice of the consumer, that's the customer of all of this. What's your view? What have you seen?
I think first off, the consumer doesn't necessarily think of transportation systems when they're out shopping. They think of, what's the impact to me? Do I have the visibility? Do I have the ability to know, where the product is at any point in time in the retailer? So before I go into the store, is that product there? So if I get visibility, flexibility in the technologies, then I'm going to be a happier consumer. I just want to make sure that I know that the shelves are stocked, that there's a product on the shelf when I go into the store. Visibility is key. Flexibility is important to the consumer.
I'm kind of with you, Ken. I mean, I'm very much on the consumer end myself. I'm by no means a specialist like Mike is, so I'm more interested in the net results of it. Is availability being affected? And to some extent, I've seen some of that. And you start to see elongated lead times on products that you assumed would be local or fast to get here and there, and things are slowing down, maybe as a result of not quite so much goods going through the ports that Mike mentioned earlier on. So there's definitely a net effect. Whether availability starts to ramp up in its importance of selection of product from different sources, that could be quite interesting, because like many people, I've been an avid Amazon Prime customer, and you're very much looking at the availability and when that product's going to arrive, and that affects whether you buy from Amazon or not. So having supply chain issues on products that you took for granted kind of encourages my view as to maybe I should be doing more shopping locally and not the convenience of arriving next day through Amazon Prime. And it's prompted me to look more locally for goods, even if it means I'm hopping in the car or having to pay higher shipping fees.
And if there's any type of exception management where that route, gets misaligned or the inventory doesn't arrive, I want to be notified as a consumer, so I don't show up at the store thinking it's going to be there at noon and it's not.
So, Sarah, if I've tagged you as like maybe the voice of CRA's involvement in all of this, have you seen an uptick in retailers' interest in it? And have you got a view as to how retailers are responding?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked a little bit about it earlier, but we are seeing supply chain and particularly transportation management selections and implementations as one of our top most requested engagements as of late. We did an analysis recently, and about 30% of our overall engagements fall under the supply chain umbrella, including transportation management.
Good stuff. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Mike, now. So we're getting going towards the end of the little coffee that we've had, but I can't leave the subject without asking you about disruption, whether it's port strikes or cyber attacks or that or something like that. That can be like an immediate impact on supply chains. Do you think this in itself is causing interest in TMS systems, or do you think it's something that's always been there?
It's always been there, but I think, the more advanced systems and those that are now being enabled or empowered by AI and machine learning algorithms are getting quite sophisticated. So, a TMS system for a long time has been able to leverage weather and traffic data. And now, algorithms are being included that can anticipate, predict disruption, and support the rerouting of shipments. An example from a client was a rail strike in Canada, which wasn't that long ago, and by using their TMS system, they were able to reroute the shipments from the west, Port Vancouver, to the east, using alternatives of full truckload down into the US, intermodal movement across the US, and then back up into Canada. Now, you can do all of that in an automated fashion within a TMS. You just say that the normal origin and destination, here's the origin and destination, the normal routing guide through Canada isn't available. What's the alternative? And then it will, in a matter of seconds, it'll throw up the sort of solution I've just described.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned AI, and I think inevitably we were going to go there, but I would see over the next 3 years, AI and predictive analytics becoming much more core in the functionality of a TMS. Making suggestions on how to reroute loads in real time, getting advanced predictions of what price movements are going to be by the carriers, and in general, automating even the remaining residual tasks that there are in a TMS. Because at the moment, I mentioned, orders come in, optimization takes place, and typically a business will still get load planners to look at those loads and tweak them. You can always make them, the answer might come out at 99% or 98% accurate, but a planner will find that extra little tweak.
Right.
Well, I think, in future with AI, you're going to see even those tasks fully automated. The answer that comes out will be 100% accurate, and managing exceptions, that will all be automated. And the interface itself to a TMS system is going to look much more like AI co-pilot structures and that sort of thing.
Good point.
So it's, I think there's a lot more advanced development coming over the next 2 to 3 years.
Super. Well, thanks for that. Ken, Sarah, any final thoughts from a CRA perspective?
Sure. I've talked to a couple of retailers that are doing kind of a dual source. So they have both sourcing in one country, and then they have alternative sourcing for the same products in a different country, just in case tariffs change higher in one country. So you never really saw that as much, 2 years ago. And now you need to be a flexible, solution in order to accommodate the things that today's retailers expect.
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay. Well, that's about all we've got time for on this edition of Cambridge Coffee Corner. To Ken, Mike, and Sarah, thanks for joining. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.